Well, welcome back. We are going to continue looking at, we're in an application, a project, and we're looking at some of the questions we need to answer, whether you do that as a standalone or you're doing it as part of this ongoing application. So right now what we want to do is we're going to focus on how do I create a database and a table in MySQL or also MariaDB with Python. Now, briefly, I do want to mention that MySQL has effectively become MariaDB if you deal with it from the non-commercial, the free side. If you go download it, you're going to see now that if you go to the MySQL site, you're going to be downloading MariaDB. There are some changes in it, and so that can cause a little bit of issue with your connection and things like that, depending on what your driver is. But it should be pretty much a one-to-one change and you're off and running. Whatever you see documented for MySQL, unless it's very old, should hold true for MariaDB. Now with Python, what we have to do, and we're going to have, I've got some code pre-written this time just because it's sort of a pain, is going to import the MySQL and the MySQL connector. Now in order to do that, it is not going to be, so like I use pip3, you're not going to do pip3 install MySQL, which you would normally do. You also should spell that with two L's. It's actually going to be MySQL connector, and that you have to spell correctly also. And once you do it, in this case, it's going to say, hey, you've already done it, and yeah, requirement's already satisfied. Once you have that, then what you can do, and what we're doing here, just as sort of a recap, I guess, we've got a class. I'm just going to have a class called MyDatabase, and I'm going to have all of the database-related stuff sitting in that so that when I run the, we'll call this the script tasks, let's call it that. Whoop. And we'll just have a little thing here to test it at the end. So we're going to have this thing called MyDatabase. So we're going to create this class. It's going to have a database name. This is going to be some database we're going to connect to because MySQL wants you to connect to something. The one that's almost always going to, well, is always going to exist is called MySQL, even if it's MariaDB. And it's the admin type of table. So depending on how you connect, you may or may not have some issues with it. The key is really just to connect, because then after that, we should be in a database. And actually, more specifically, you can always overwrite this and do it to a database you already have rights to, permissions to. And we're going to have a connection as part of our class. And so here's the first real meat. This thing up here is just a query that we're going to talk about later. So we're going to start with our connect. It's actually fairly straightforward. You are going to send a dictionary of configuration information, which is your user, your password, the host name, the database you're connecting to, which we're pulling from up here, and then this raison warnings, because it is something that I found, particularly with MariaDB, you need to have that there, otherwise it will cause issues and not let you to connect. And once you do that, you're going to use the MySQL.connector, which is up here, and then you're going to connect, and then you're going to give it that config information. So it's fairly straightforward. What I've got here is going to be useless to you probably. So you're going to give it whatever your username is, whatever your password is, probably, in this case, if it's local, 127.0.0.1. If not, give it the IP address and whatever the database name is. So if you do that, if you write that code right here, we're going to say here, and we're going to connect. So let's just do this. We're going to say, we'll go ahead and wrap this whole thing in a try except. And let's do this. So return value is going to be either -1 or 1. And then we're going to return the return value. Whoops. And so here, let's just say, I'm not going to do this yet. I am going to close it afterwards. And I'm going to do, let's just do this, print that so I can see if I connect or not. And if I run it, then what I'm going to see here is I got a 1. So I have connected to the database. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So that's our first thing, is we want to be able to connect to the database. Once we've connected to the database, now let's actually create a database. That was basically connecting to the server, so we're going to create a database within that. Now, the way you do that within MySQL is actually really simple. It's create space database space the name. And so what we want to do here is we're going to come down here and, well, actually, I'm sorry, first, let's go look at this. Let's actually do something in this. So is that list tables? That is, oh, list databases. So let's do this. List databases, which is right here, is very simple command. It's just show databases. Once you're in there, execute show databases. So what we're going to do, and this is sort of our first shot, is we're going to come in. We're going to, when we connect, we already took that connection and held it within the class. So that CNX is now there. So when we come in, we do this, list databases. We're going to get a cursor off of our connection. So we've got our connection in there. We haven't closed it or anything. Then we've got this query, show databases, and we're going to execute. Use that cursor to execute. And then now that we've executed it, we're going to fetch all of the rows back, and we're going to store that in this thing called rows. And we're just going to walk through and say for row in rows, print the row, return value equals 1. Otherwise, it's going to be -1. So that will give us here, we don't need a database for list databases, and then we're going to close the connection. We're done. So now if we look at it, we get this, is that we come in and we get the 1 for the connection. And these are all the databases that I happen to have. And this one, somewhere in here, you will see MySQL. But you also see that each of these is a pairing within itself. So what I can do is, if I go into my list tables, what I can do is I can try to do the first piece and get just the name. And let's see how that works out for us. And that gives us just the names for everything. So did I do that right? Oh, that's list tables. Sorry, wrong one. That's why I shouldn't be in. Let's do that. I want list databases. So here, if I do row 0, now I'm getting all of the database names. And this is really just a convenience kind of utility function, but to show that now we have actually connected to the database and we have we're able to do something with it. So now that we can list databases, we're going to do a MyDB dot create database, and we're going to give it a name. And so this one is going to be create database. So let's call this create database, and we're going to call this Shorty. It's going to be our database. And so now let's move our database list afterwards. And so if we create this database, which is right here, create database is very straightforward. We're going to do a create space database and then the name. We're going to give it the name. We're going to actually go ahead and set the name that we're working with. Now that doesn't set it within the database itself or within the server itself. So what we would really want to do is come in here, and after we set our name, we're just going to do a use, and that'll switch our database over. We're going to execute the query, and we can go ahead and commit. And that will put us so that we're actually seeing the database that we're in. So what we're going to do, let's do this. We're going to come in. This time we're going to connect, and we're going to do a list tables. And we'll show that later. I'll walk through that a little bit. But right now it's just to show it. So when we first come in, we're going to connect to MySQL. And I think it's going to give us a list because I think I've got a user that has that permission. We're going to find out. And then we're going to create Shorty. We're going to list the databases and see if it's there. And then we're actually going to list the tables in Shorty because we should be in that database. So in doing that, and let's do this. Let's do this. List tables. Whoops. Typing skills are a little bit off. Okay, so we'll do that. That gives us something to work with. Now there's some other things we could do. We might want to put it up in those functions, but for now we're just going to keep it simple. So if we run it now, let's go look at this. What we're going to see is, here we go. So we create it, we come in and we list tables, and we see initially these are all MySQL tables, and you can sort of see stuff because it's like the servers and stuff like that. Then we come in and we're going to list our databases, and boom, because we've already created Shorty, it's right there. So we have that database now. And then we list tables, we're getting nothing on that because there are no tables found because we haven't created any in Shorty. So now let's just do the same thing, and let's get the list databases and list tables. We'll get those out of the way. So let's see what happens if we try to create the database again. Can't create it. It already exists. So what we can do with this is, I can believe we can do if not exists. And there's better ways to do this, but we're going to just do if not exists name. I think that will work. We're going to find out. Let's see. So, okay. Oh, that needs to be if not exists. Oop, name. That needs to be double quotes. The single quotes need to wrap our name, which is why there are better ways to do this, which we will talk about in a minute. And then it's there. So it's not actually that. I forget what it actually is called. So we're just going to leave it at this, and we're just not going to worry about it again. So we're going to do this try catch. It's going to print that. It's going to do return value. And actually what we can do here, that is the create database. We're not even going to bother printing it right now. We'll just return it. So it doesn't really matter. And we'll carry on. So now we're going to get no errors, mostly because we're not displaying them. And oh, we don't need to print this. We do always need to connect. We're always going to need to set this up. So we're going to key to connect. We don't need to create the database anymore. So now what we're going to do is the database name is now going to be Shorty. So we're going to get that from the start. So we're going to connect right away to Shorty. And so if we do MyDB.list tables, we should see none from the start. And there you go. We don't see any. So now we're connecting to our database. We don't need to create it anymore. So we'll just put this up here somewhere. And we'll put that there. Okay. Wait, no. Yeah, we'll do that. So we've got all that. Now what we need to do, and this is sort of our cleanup work. Clean up resources. So now, it's really not very useful if we don't have any tables. So let's finish that question, which was the original one here is, hey, how do I create, well, that's in the way, how do I create a database and a table within Python? So we're going to do the same thing, and there are a couple ways you can do it, but we're going to do it, whoops, in here because it's going to be something that could be useful in the long run for us to like build a database from scratch. So we're going to use this create table SQL. This is what we're going to execute this time around. And the way this is going to do it is it's going to be, and we've created this out, so it's going to be table links. And there's a lot of ways you could build this on the fly if you really wanted, but we're not going to. In this case, it's going to be, the table's name is going to be links. We're going to have an ID because we need one, and it's going to auto increment. So this means the first record will be 1, the second one will be 2, 3, 4, etc. We're going to have the original link that was sent in because this is the links that are dealing with this Shorty application, which basically what it cares about is the source. Here, if you retrieve new URL, it's whatever your old URL is, and then what is that new URL? What is that ID to give you the new URL? And so in here, we're going to store the old one. We're going to have a code just in case, which is usually going to be probably, a couple ways we can do it. For now, we're going to start what's going to be the ID. And then, or maybe not, we'll figure out what we want to do with that. Then the user ID, and we're just going to assume that at some point we may allow for a user ID. If not, it's going to just be a 0, so we don't have to worry about it. And then, of course, what we need to do. We're not going to go too deep into it, but then we need a primary key, which is going to be our unique ID that we're generating because we are auto incrementing. So in order to do that, when we create table, what we do here, we don't need name. Create table is going to come in. It's going to execute within that class the self.createTableSQL. It's going to commit, and then we're off and running. And so now if we do, we're going to do create table. Whoops. Then we are going to see now, let's do this. It's going to be the tables in, and we're going to go ahead and do MyDB.db name. So now we're going to see where are these things at. If we run it, boom, tables in shorty is links. And what we want to do, since we have that list tables, let's fix that as well. So here, we do the same thing. So we're just going to take that first piece, so we get the name and not that full structure. Now if we run it, we're going to have a problem because it's going to say the links already exist. And so we could check that, but right now we're just going to go ahead and allow that to go. It's going to say, hey, tables and shorty is links. And so here we go. So we have created a database and a table in Python using in MySQL using that connector. So check, question answered. We're going to continue on. We're going to go into our next question next time around. So just take a look out there. If there's anything else that's a side note or something, you're like, hey, how do they get there? Check it out, because we probably have one of those out there as we are building out this approach to information to build out your applications. But we're going to continue back with this application as well. And we're going to come right back into a couple things. We're going to actually save a record, and then we're going to be able to search the table for a record, because we're going to start linking our database into our little shorty functionality here. Thanks a lot for your time. We'll catch you next time.
Well, hello, this is Rob with Developreneur, also known as Building Better Developers. Wanted to announce that we have school.developreneur.com. Feel free to check it out if you like any of this information, any of the content that we've sent, and you would like to see more. You can come out, you can enroll for free. We have free courses. We've got places for you to get better at just learning a technology, our how-tos. You can work on your business skills. We can help you with becoming a better developer, as in coding and things like that. A lot of the stuff you've seen on YouTube, we also have out at school.developreneur. We just have it in a little more of a educational format and a way for you to track your progress as you move forward becoming a better developer.